say Earth Station Trek, so maybe they are sharing our feed.
Maybe.
Well, we'll just have to go with that.
Okay. All right.
If that's the case, thank you all very much for sharing our feed. We really appreciate it.
If that was the case, I appreciate it. And if I hit the wrong button, sorry. But they all say Earth Station Trek. I don't know how that could possibly.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. I did notice the link, Charles. The link you sent. It's funny. It almost looks like an alien word. It ends at GAHA. I swear it always looks like some weird Klingon word you're trying to say.
Interesting.
So for the people watching, this is riveting.
Yeah. So wherever you're watching from, hey guys. All right. So let's get into the episode. Let's take a quick break if you're listening on the audio podcast and promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. And then when we come back, we'll get into our discussion topic. So stay right there. And then we'll just go ahead and come back if you're watching with us live. Veronica, do you want to kick us off with a spoiler warning?
Arf, spoiler.
Okay, that was interesting.
Man, it's been a while since we've had to do a spoiler warning.
I know, yeah.
Oh, I love hearing that again.
Okay, well, we're back. That threw me off.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, so we're back and talking about the season premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So what did everybody think?
I thought it was good. Yeah, it was good. A lot of it I liked. A couple things I didn't care for. A lot of it I liked. It felt, this is so funny. Michael Phillips had said it was a very solid episode. And I 100% agree with that. And that is not a negative. It felt like a really established world. It really did. It felt like Trek. And that's actually a super compliment. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like, oh, I'm looking at some new Trek. And I hate to say this, sometimes I felt that way about Discovery. I'm kind of aware of, I don't know what it is, what they're trying to do. This felt like I was just in a world. That's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed it. I loved getting off world. I loved seeing Klingons.
Yeah,
I love seeing an exploration of what Spock is going through. Mm-hmm. There's one weird thing though, and that is that, we had like 30 seconds of Pike and Una, and that was it.
Right.
So that's a weird thrust for a first episode. I just have to say.
Alan, do you know? Does anybody have a clue who she is? That they kept. I was trying to search my memory for anybody that could be some legal person or something. They kept saying she. Anybody have any clue? Who Pike's going to get help?
No, they haven't revealed that yet. I would expect that's going to come in the next episode.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure the next episode is going to be all about Pike and Una.
Yeah, I was thinking because if it were Kirk and he was looking for a lawyer, and if it was a she, it would be a real from Court Martial or even Samuel T. Cogley, attorney at law, as a man. But we don't know enough about Pike to even guess who she might be.
Yeah, I'm gonna hope it's somebody we don't know. Yeah. I think we've got plenty of old characters coming back already.
Yeah,
I don't need it to be Samuel T. Cogley or Ariel Shaw or anything like that.
I don't either, and I'm just afraid that's what it's going to be because that's what Strange New Worlds does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that very last scene, we'll talk about that definitely. But anyway,
so Veronica, what'd you think of it?
I liked the story this week. I do not like what it seems like they're going to do with the season.
In which way?
With the Gorn. And yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
Well, you're talking to Keith, so he's right with you.
Yeah.
I'll have to talk about that ending. Yeah, I agree. I was so excited for whatever that was gonna be, and then when they showed that, I was like, crap. But yeah, it just felt like a lived-in universe, which is surprising because it's only it's only its second season. It really did. They feel comfortable together. Charles, you're talking about new characters, even though we've seen M'Benga before. It's cool to have somebody that we don't know much about in which you can write something, because what the heck was going on with M'Benga and that green liquid and what's going on with him? Like, whoa. So
the Hulk
that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah. So I like to see some more of that. Chapel, I've seen a lot of people online saying this is not Chapel from the original series. M'Benga.
That is true. It's not, because she's 10 years younger.
Yeah. M'Benga is there's an interesting backstory going on here. Whatever PTSD he might have. Also, what I like about him is the actor is a very controlled actor. He has a kind of a low key and he has a tight-lipped way of speaking. But when he had that stuff in him, you saw something else was there. Like he could be really dangerous, and you wonder what's going on with that guy. She almost had to stop him from killing somebody. So there's something else going on with him.
Yeah, I will say I like this M'Benga story better than what they did in season 1. Even though, I mean, I remember when Strange New Worlds was announced and M'Benga was announced as being on it, and people were like, how could he be the chief medical officer now and he's not on the original series? Like, what, did he get demoted? Why would he not be in that? But I mean, what we've seen of him so far over 11 episodes is he had his kid like hidden in a transporter, and he keeps like super soldier serum in his backpack. You know what I mean? Like, I could see why he could run afoul of like HR at some point.
HR.
Yeah. I could see him going back to Vulcan to try to meditate because they got to bring the other doctor on before McCoy. Dr.
Maybe.
Boyce?
I mean, you could not Boyce. Boyce is with Pike. You're talking about Dr. Piper.
Dr. Piper, right?
Right. But they can ignore Piper. I don't think you have to address Piper.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. So, Charles, what did you think of the episode?
I mean, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was mind blowing or anything like that. I thought it was good. I thought it was. They made some. I mean, choices I don't necessarily think are bad, but sidelining Anson Mount and Rebecca Romaine in the first episode is a little weird. Even though I like getting an episode that sort of excludes them and focuses more on the rest of the cast, but you'd expect that sort of mid-season and not the premiere.
Exactly. It does. And then, it's just like in the last season, or no, 2 seasons ago with Discovery, when they find themselves in the future. The first episode was focused totally 100% on what's her name? Burnham. Yeah. And then the second episode was all about the ship.
Right.
And then the two halves reconnect at the end. So this one is doing the same thing, it looks like, but from the opposite way. So next week must be the Una story with Pike leading the charge to get her out. Yeah. Here's some comments.
Okay.
Somebody on Facebook says that according to the trailer for next week's episode, the someone that is referred to as she is brand new.
Hooray.
That's good news. Our buddy Dan Leckie says, since the final episode this season is called Hegemony, it wouldn't be surprising if the second season finale is focused on the Gorn. Yeah, that's just going to be it.
Yeah.
He also says the drugs stuff reminded me of Enterprise season 4 when Archer temporarily had cranial ridges.
Okay.
And presumably the same Facebook user says, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Boyce during the Cage which was pre-Discovery?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I hope we do see Boyce at some point, not as the CMO, but as, we could be retired. He's of that age already when he was on the Cage.
Yeah.
He easily could, be out golfing or something, and Pike have to turn to him for some reason.
Right. Golfing.
Or space golf.
Space golf.
I don't know what they do. But yeah, I mean, I thought this episode was good. I thought they burnt a lot of time at the beginning of the episode before they got to the adventure. You're almost 20 minutes in before the adventure really gets started. It's a lot of hanging out at space dock and having conversations, which I don't mind, but it's just another thing that I thought was kind of a strange choice for a season premiere.
I really enjoyed Uhura's insistence that this is my station. You do not touch my station. I am working at my station, and you're just going to hold the heck on.
Right.
Until I get the backups online, because I have work to do.
As somebody who works in IT, I actually have to agree with her in that God should have known better. You don't ever tell anybody, I'm just going to boot you or whatever. It's no big deal. You just don't do that.
Right.
That's a great way to lose everything.
Right, exactly. So for people watching, let us know in the comments wherever you're watching what you thought of the episode and any questions you might have about the episode and if you liked it or not and all that stuff. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, let's get into Carol Kane.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Hey, we're in sync.
She was amazing.
Well, first of all, I was like, what in the heck is this accent that she's doing. But they explained it, so I'm fine with it.
It's a Lathinite?
Something like that, yeah.
Whatever that is.
Apparently, there are very long-lived people.
Mm-hmm.
Almost immortal, she said.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for Carol Kane to be doing a comedy accent. You know?
Oh, no.
That's right in her wheelhouse.
Oh, totally.
I thought she was great. She sort of lit up every scene that she was in.
Yes.
Oh, 100%. But you knew she would. I mean, that's just what she does.
Right.
Oh, she's so great.
And I thought very TOS that you have these characters. Like, she's a character who's essentially an immortal, not necessarily an immortal, but very long-lived. And they look just like humans, which fits right in with the original series time frame, because all kind of aliens look just like humans. But also that, like, her reason for wanting to get into space is like the downside of being immortal is that you get bored.
She's bored.
Yeah. And I
Spock
love
was like, because you lose those you love, and she's like, no, you
no, everybody does that.
Right.
No, that was great. And I was kind of afraid, especially when the episode started with them saying, you know, that we are down this officer and we don't have a chief engineer. I was like, oh, they're not going to do that same damn thing they did last year, where Hemmer basically for like 3 seconds, all they see is him walking onto the ship, and that was it. And you had to wait till the second episode to see any of actual Hemmer. And I was like, they better not do that to Carol Kane. They did not.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I like that she was just right in there, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I thought she was good. I thought she's an intriguing character to add to the show, and I mean, I like that she adds a levity to it.
Dan says she's lanthanite, which is a type of rock or mineral or something in reality.
Interesting.
Yeah. I knew that, but I don't know how that goes with the name. Yeah, it's one of the rare earth elements. If I'm not mistaken. I did not like that she happened to know Spock's mother, that she said she came out to her.
Right. Of course you didn't.
Yeah, I can't stand. You know, I you know me, and I just hate where everybody's got to be connected to everybody. I don't know what the point of that is. Why does she have to know Spock's mama? I just don't get that.
Well, why can't she know Spock's mother?
Well, it's not that she can't, but it's just, my goodness, everybody's connected to everybody. I really consider that lazy writing. That's a personal thing.
Look, space is small.
No, it's big.
But Starfleet is small.
Right. Even it's big.
but if you live basically immortality, space seems a lot smaller than just us, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could see it if she gets bored. Maybe she's like, "Hey, I hear about there's this human woman who moved Vulcan and married to Vulcan. I got to get to know her." I could see it. I could see it like that happening, because as far as we know, I think Amanda was the first human to marry a Vulcan. I think.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I mean, hopefully it means that we'll get Amanda on the series at some point.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I know Keith wouldn't, but I would love to see that.
Well, it would make sense because Spock's there, so it's a relative of his.
Exactly.
I can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Spock, what did you think about it was funny. I watched the last episode of season 1 just to get in preparation, and it reminded me about the whole thing with the Gorn, where Spock kind of had to let his emotions go. And he still lost his emotional control. So what did y'all think about the emotional Spock, especially the one who was tearing up at the end? It sounds like a leading question, but what did you think?
I struggle a little with this Spock.
Me too.
I mean, I think he's playing him well, and I know that they're trying to do but Spock between the cage and the Spock that we know. So he's going to be a bit more emotional. And they did have that thing at the end of season 1 where he let his emotions out. Right. And when he was fighting the Gorn, I don't know. I'm not angered by it or anything like that. It's just not the Spock that I prefer.
Yeah, but I think
that they're following up on that happened, and they're not just ignoring it.
Yeah. So consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're showing how Spock comes to be the Spock that we think of.
Right.
You know, and I'm okay with that. I mean, not everybody is the same that they always are. You know, everybody goes through those things, and it's interesting. It was always interesting in the original series when you saw those moments of him struggling between humanity and vulcanity, I'm going to say. and we're just seeing more of that here because he's younger and he's less experienced, and I'm okay with it. I don't want them to dwell too much on it. I don't want to be like super emotional Spock. I don't want that, but I do like seeing those steps that he's taking.
I think I'm in the middle because I agree with what you said about they didn't just drop it, because I think that's one thing that sometimes Trek used to do. So I do think having the consequences. And I remember an episode, this is not a spoiler really, but an episode of Enterprise, for various reasons, T'Pol had been struggling with her emotional control. And there's an episode where the captain goes in her quarters and she's meditating. And he said for the first time he understood why. And he says, you meditate. And she said, Vulcans, we must meditate every single day. And for the first time, he said, I understood why. So I kind of like that. I can get if he lost his emotional control on that level. Yeah, he's going to have to get it back. And it may not be as easy as we think it might be. So I'm okay with that, but at the same time, like you said, Charles, I don't want it to go on and on. I'm not loving the potential love thing with Nurse Chapel. I thought the tears in his eyes toward the end was a little much. This is what you expect from this group of writers.
Well, I don't think it's this group of writers necessarily. I think that's the way modern television operates.
Well, that's true. That's actually true because it was so funny. I was watching Strange New Worlds, not just watch some original series, especially because what we had done recently. And I realized they actually talk faster now than they even did in the original series, because I was watching the last episode, which is basically a recreation of Balance of Terror from the original series. And I realized that not only did the scenes play faster, but they actually speak faster. Like everything's sped up for more action. So you're right. It's just that modern television is very different from old television.
Yeah. Well, it's been half a century. I mean, things are going to change. I mean, what gets me, like people in the original series, like if Spock were to smile and people would be like, who, Spock? Smile? Like,
yeah.
You should have been here 6 or 7 years ago when he was crying and screaming in the hallways.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Let me get a couple of things from Dan. First, he says, with Vulcan age limit being hundreds of years, I'm surprised that Ortegas is surprised that Pelia is over 100. But I agree with that. But at the same time, we don't know that she's any more familiar with Vulcans than having just been on the ship with Spock for a year. So that might not be part of her, like, ingrained in her head.
So he's talking about Carol Kane's character?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I thought at the moment, didn't she just think she was a human? So I think she just thought, wow, you're 100 years old. So I think that was her thought, was you're 100 years old, and still in the service. Because even by then, humans are living like 120 or so. But she's probably thinking, wow, you're not retired?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that was what that was.
That's also, it's just a surprising thing to drop into a conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. And he has a question for us. Akiva Goldsman has said he thinks it would be cool if Strange New Worlds got to the point where chronologically they were literally brushing up against TOS episodes with the two shows overlapping. Is that something that we would like to see?
Not really.
Not if they're on the Enterprise.
Yeah, they can't do that. If they can't do that.
I mean, they could do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
They own Star Trek, but
Kirk. Yeah.
I mean,
but go ahead.
I mean, they could do episodes on their Enterprise and say that this one's between the Man Trap and the Corbomite Maneuver, or whatever, or the Man Trap and I Mudd, or whatever, or not Mudd's women. I mean, but it wouldn't look the same, and it wouldn't be the same show. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which
Agreed.
I think is enough of a struggle for Star Trek. A lot of Star Trek fans take the canon literally. Like that's what the Enterprise looked like. That's how the characters acted. Right. And some fans think that, this is just a dramatization of the logs, and you can play around with it and there's different points of view on it. I think for people who look at it more literally, then that would be very jarring. It's jarring enough being 7 years before the original series, and it looks very different, and people act very different. But if it was supposed to be like next week, Plato's stepchildren happens, you know what I mean? Like that would be strange.
New Worlds. Sorry, you said strange.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, it was dumb. I shouldn't have done it. Okay. Jay Deuce or Jay Ducey, I'm not sure which, says,
hey,
I think, oh, you know Jay?
No, just
saying, you're just saying hi to Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hey, yeah, hey, Jay. Welcome, Jay.
I think the reason why there is the Chapel Spock love is because of how she was before they mentioned Roger back on TOS. Yes, absolutely. We're seeing the history of that relationship,
and they alluded to that in this one.
Yeah,
with the archaeological
yes
medicine thing that she was talking about going to do, because that was Roger Corby's thing. Like Spock called him the pasteur of archaeological medicine and said he used to be a professor. And so presumably that's where she would meet Roger Corby.
Yeah,
and he might get it. I mean, she might go away for 2 months and come back engaged, and that would complicate things with Spock.
I would love that. It would be great if that's where they sort of ended this season, with her going off to do that, and then next season pick up with her coming back a changed person,
right?
New experiences, a new relationship, an engagement, and how that changes her dynamic with the, I think that'd be really neat.
Yeah, for sure.
And that reminds me of something. When we were watching the trailer and we were sort of picking the trailer apart, there's those scenes where it looks like she and Mbenga are like in this deep embrace, and they might be kissing or whatever. And that they do that to, that isolated moment, because they're taking it out of context and they're wanting to lead you somewhere. And now we find out just because they're going to like jump into space unprotected and and he's going to use his little backpack to steer them wherever they need to go. So it's just funny the way that trailers are manipulative.
Yeah. See, Kirk might not even been in it, Keith. You might have.
So he's not going to get stuck in the door to the department store, right?
Yeah, you never know.
I actually thought that scene was actually pretty good, and I agree with you, Alan, because I saw them, and I even in the show, I kind of wondered if they're going to kiss, and I remember that as absolutely one of the scenes from the trailers. I thought that was cool. I liked the relationship between Chapel and Mbenga. I like them as almost some kind of war buddies or something like that. It's kind of like Mal, and I forget her name from Firefly, and I should not forget her name. Gina Torres' character, Zoe. Yeah, and I like that they've been through the trenches together, and that whatever they've experienced, she's really concerned about him. And I'm very curious about what happened. Of course, he made that bitter comment about the war with the Klingons that cost, God, he said 100 million lives or something like that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So I think he's dealing with some serious PTSD.
All right. Jay just dropped some hardcore truth on me that's blowing my mind. So let's put it up here. Jay says, feel free to speak on this at the end, but did anyone else catch that the planet at the very end is the same planet that the albino is hiding in the DS9 episode Blood Oath?
Dude, no.
So you talking about the planet at the very end, like on the map? Like when the Gorn ship's coming in? I
don't think Jay's able to respond in real time. So
I'm guessing at the very end, maybe that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, maybe.
And if so, no, I didn't catch that.
No, me either.
And Jay says yes, that is correct.
No.
That's so interesting. Good catch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Holy cow, that's crazy.
Yeah. There was a lot of Discovery. Dan says yes, it's on the map. But I was going to say there's a lot of ties to Discovery in this episode. The Klingon War, and they even had flashbacks to Discovery in the previously on, but then they were using the Discovery sets for the interior of that ship. It was a redress of the Discovery sets.
Yeah, I thought so.
And even like it looks like La'an was wearing either the same costume or a very similar costume to the one that Georgiou was wearing when she was undercover on Kronos. Or not, was it Kronos? I can't remember. On the Klingon planet she was on in the beginning of season 2 with the big hood,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I just thought it was interesting and tying into the Klingon War, which I think makes sense. I like that they're alluding back to the things, because that's only a few years ago in Universe, Right. And I know that Strange New Worlds needs to be its own show, but it sat right between Discovery and TOS. Which are very different shows,
It does need to be its own show, but it also needs to be a part of that continuity.
Right.
And I like it if they're going to refer back to something that in their time just happened a few years ago. And, there is that involvement / no involvement at all for Pike.
Yeah.
That kind of sat heavily on him.
Yeah.
In Discovery.
And for the world, I mean, if they went through, this 100 million people dead, situation just a few years ago, that would still be in people's psyches and people's minds. I don't want to talk about it every week, but it is useful to sort of refer back to that. And I like that they're in a very sort of original series, sort of Cold War situation with the Klingons now, where they have complicated, treaties and one wrong step and we could be going to war. I like that. That felt very true to that time frame.
I agree. I really enjoyed that. Sorry, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I was going to say, and piggybacking what you're saying, Charles, I read, years ago, one of the things, if you look at all the series throughout time, even if you go jump over to the Kelvinverse with Star Trek Beyond, Star Trek, the Federation and Starfleet go through these periods where they think things are okay, and then they get traumatized again. Because I read decades ago that, everybody talks about how Kirk and the people, his generation were cowboys. What had happened was, because of the stuff with the Klingons and because of the huge number of losses of starships at that time, Starfleet intentionally looked for people like Kirk to be captains. They wanted someone with a little bit more of that quote unquote cowboy mentality.
Right.
And because they felt that was the kind of captain you needed to survive that world, the world of post Klingons and so forth. And then once they thought they had peace, they started looking for captains like Picard, who was much more of a diplomat. And so you go through these cycles, and I guess it's, it's like that in our real world, So I kind of like that. They thought Pike was the best they thought Pike was one of the best, so they wanted to preserve him. They wanted to keep him behind. Even though, like you said, that weighs heavily on him because he said it took a toll on his whole crew to know they missed that war.
On that point, and I don't want to go too far down that road, but on that point, I think that it's interesting to watch the entirety of DS9 because there are times when Sisko doesn't quite seem like he really fits the job that he's been given.
Yes.
Until that war breaks out. And then you get like full on Sisko and it's glorious.
Exactly.
Dan says that Celia Rose Gooding loved her away costume in this episode because she kept snacks in the pouch on her belt. And that's funny because 100,000 years ago in season 3 of Doctor Who, in the Dalek Master Plan, the character Sarah Kingdom, it was the same thing. She had this costume where she's like a space police kind of thing, and it had a belt and it had like a pouch on the belt, and it was only there for show. It didn't do anything, and she would keep sandwiches in it.
That's awesome.
That's pretty wild.
I love those kind of behind the scenes stories. Terry Farrell told one, they were asking her what it was like making DS9, and she was like, it was really hot and they had to set up a fan. like for them to like going to work,
Yeah.
Right.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Dan asks, would you have liked Pike to have been more in this season premiere? Yes.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
not in the story.
Yeah, I was fine with it. I like anything that just different and throws me off a little bit. So I was fine watching the other cast. I was absolutely fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. it just seems more like that should have been episode 2, and Pike should have been episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they shouldn't have divided the two as early as they did. Maybe midway through the episode or something. It just seems like a mid-season episode.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, they sort of wrote themselves into that corner though, because it looks like next week's going to be a trial episode. And like I was saying when we were talking about the trailer, like I'd be surprised if they kicked off the season with a trial when it's just people standing around in a courtroom.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
action punchy.
That is true. This is a way to have a big
scene.
action episode and a returning, quote unquote villain, alien race, we'll say. And to set up a mystery that's going to play out through season 2 with this all this stuff that they're going on. So yeah, I mean, I can see exactly why they did it. It just seems like a weird thing to split your crew in the first 5 minutes,
right,
and send your top dog off to not do anything.
It says a lot about that the rest of the cast though, that they're comfortable having the season premiere without I mean, arguably the 2 biggest actors on the show before Carol Kane got there. But, the 2 leads that they're letting everyone else carry the show. And I thought it worked in that respect. And I was, I thought of it as we're watching this episode. Like they really do feel like the crew of the Enterprise.
They do.
Yes.
Yeah. It's big.
And, last year we were saying things like we need more Ortegas. And, what's her name? Mitchell on the bridge. She got
Mitchell.
significant stuff to do this week, and I was really surprised that she was in like a ready room meeting, and that she like did her own little part of the plan, you know, where she goes into. I thought it was so great that she was integrated that way.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
I wouldn't have guessed that she'd had more scenes than Anson Mount in this episode.
So what the heck happened to what's his name in Transporter last year, where we saw him like half a season?
I think that he got a better gig on the Vampire Academy, if that's right. So I think he got a more substantial role on a different show.
I mean, good for him, but that's disappointing because I really liked him. Mm-hmm. But now we have a new person in Transport.
Yep.
So Noah, I can't remember his last name. Their last name.
Right.
Sorry. I will never get that right. I'm so sorry.
Well, we'll all correct each other.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So the character was it what they called the character? Something J?
Jay.
Yeah, it was Crewman J.
Yeah.
Or Chief J.
Yeah.
Chief J. Yeah.
Yep.
Chief
J.
Yeah.
They look like they're 12 years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this youngin' doing, running the Transporter room?
Yeah.
But
that's appropriate.
The actor is actually 32 years old.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I know.
Wow. Definitely looks young.
Yeah.
What did y'all think about the Star Trek Undiscovered Country plot? Kind of, sort of. Get together the start a war so they could sell dilithium, which is out of Journey to Babel or Babel, with the Orions.
Yeah.
I know sometimes people complain that the new Star Trek is nothing but universe-threatening plots. This was not a universe-threatening plot.
Yeah.
I guess the way the Klingons are, I was kind of wondering, can one ship in one incident start a war?
Yes.
Maybe. I guess they can with the Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
But what did y'all think about that plot?
No, I thought it was fine. I mean, you're right. It's reminiscent of some things we've seen on Star Trek before. But I mean, you're dealing with very familiar species, and I mean, this is a few years before the original series, so it makes sense that similar things would be happening. They don't want to go to war with the Klingons, which is how we started Errand of Mercy as well, as Kirk saying, we don't want to go to war with the Klingons. But now we've got a different backstory for it, where we're seeing why they don't want to go to war with the Klingons. They just came out of a war with the Klingons.
Right.
Jay chimes in by saying, can one ship start a war? The Vulcan hello says yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, assassinating one Archduke can, start the dominoes going,
Right.
Yeah. And then the one that started the Spanish-American War, which people think we was our own fault, but we used it. Teddy Roosevelt used it, and others said, hey, use it as an excuse. So I guess that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dan says the rebels are called the Broken Circle. Maybe a callback to the Circle from DS9. That's exactly what it reminded me of.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I would have been like, let's call it the Broken Square, just so it doesn't sound like DS9.
Right.
And the broken trapezoid.
When it gets me a cool name like that, they're gonna have to come back at some point in time in some shape, form, fashion.
Oh yeah, we have not heard the last of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm sure of that,
because
that's a plot that's just brewing with a renegade faction of Klingons, and come on, they're going to do something with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe they're transitioning. They're like, this is going to be like season 2 is going to be the Gorn year, and they're going to transition out of that and into a new Klingon plot for season 3.
Yeah. To borrow a term from Doctor Who, I wonder if we're going to start calling M'Benga the War Doctor, because the man even knows how to redo a transponder, which I know from real life is it's supposed to be damn near impossible. And I think I want to say in the sci-fi series, The Expanse, if you even tried to redo a transponder on a ship, it would blow up on you because it's such a big deal. So
I mean, that makes sense.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. You would think you'd protect that stuff.
Yeah. Yes. He's got some skills. He's definitely seen some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They were going back to something Dan had mentioned in the comments earlier. They referred to the ship as a Crossfield class.
Yeah.
Right.
Which it's not.
Oh, it's not?
No, the Crossfield class is Discovery. Discovery is a Crossfield class ship. The ship did not look anything like a Crossfield class ship.
Well, but it was one character making a guess, right?
Yeah, her guess was way off.
Yep. and yeah, exactly. Oh, that's funny.
I kind of
Go
ahead. I was gonna say, I kind of sort of feel sorry for the Broken Circle, because how the hell long does it take to build a whole starship with warp engines underground? They blew it up like in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Like, oh man, I've been working on that thing for months.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but obviously you're a crap organization if you use the word broken in your name. I mean, that's not setting yourself up for success. Come on.
Yeah.
That's true. What do we think about getting an origin story for Spock's Vulcan harp?
Nah.
It's okay. I'm going to say this. I am the guy who complains about unnecessary connections. Like, this has to be connected to this. This one didn't bother me that much. It didn't bother me too much. Although I always assumed that the whole thing about Vulcans are like warrior monks. They're like our generalization of Shaolin monks, where they're incredible warriors and incredible philosophers. So I assume that all Vulcans play instruments because it's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little surprised that somebody had to give that to him, but it didn't bother me.
I was surprised he had it back there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, just have this like Vulcan loot sitting like in a closet.
Can you see that scene? Can you see that scene in Lower Decks? You go back there. He's got all kinds of crap from all kinds of alien races. He's got like batlets back there, stuff to hand out. I did chuckle at that.
Exactly what would be in Lower Decks.
The weird thing to me was that we've already seen we've already seen it, like in hanging in his quarters on Discovery and on Strange New Worlds. Like, it's been in the background. So maybe he was tuning it for him. I don't know.
I did think it was interesting in the way that it played into the emotional Spock storyline.
Yeah.
And but I also, with the little detail about all Vulcans study music for the mathematical principles.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was so interesting because we think of music in a certain way, and it's obviously very different than the way that Vulcans think of it. And I think that's fascinating. It brings me. What? I'm sorry.
I like that touch.
Yeah, it brings me back to Bach, who was a brilliant composer, but he was a mathematician as far as music goes, because he would write fugues that would play a certain way. One way, you flip the page over, it plays exactly the same way. It's a perfect palindrome. And he was just a genius when it came to basically the mathematical structure of music. So I love the fact that that's incorporated into the Vulcan mindset.
Yeah, I like that's a good idea. Like, an alien race can meet us and be like, wait, you listen to music for fun?
Right. It fascinated me in the same way that it did when on DS9, when Weyoun was like, we were not built with a sense of aesthetics, so I have no idea how to judge a drawing or a piece of art or a piece of music.
Right.
I can't comprehend what that is like.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a fascinating detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was cool. And I didn't hate it or anything like that. I thought there were some silly things about it, but he'd basically reach under his desk and like, well, have you tried playing this? Like, what else you got back there?
Yeah, that was funny.
Well, he had it stashed there just in case he needed it. That's what I think.
He knew what Spock was going through and was eventually going to come to him.
He's been telling people for years, like, this is going to come in handy. Just you wait.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, and I guess it's because we're talking about how the crew is becoming more familiar with each other, is La'an has definitely loosened up as a character from when she first came on. She was so uptight originally, and she still has that in her. And also I think we're helping with the little girl with the whole thing and her parents also. But she's kind of a different character from she was in the first season. I like to see growth like that in a character.
It could, I agree with that, but it also could simply be that she's not on duty, and she may adopt that mindset again when she puts the uniform back on. Now I am the serious, disciplined, uptight person that I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, security. Yeah, but it's good to see a different side to her, which is nice.
Agreed.
I like that.
Jay says, Charles, I think it was an OG Crossfield class, since if you look at the Nimitz class aircraft carrier, they look different, completely different from the first ones used in 1975 to the last ones launched in 2009.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, maybe it looks pretty different.
Yeah.
I don't know what components are left.
Right.
Jay, welcome aboard, brother. You got
right. I know, right?
You got knowledge of ships and battleships and stuff like that. This will be interesting.
Right, bringing out the aircraft carrier knowledge.
Right.
I'm loving it.
Yeah. Yes.
Dan says Vulcan comprehension of music is reminding me of First Contact when they're alarmed by Cochrane playing his rock and roll.
Yeah. Maybe they were doing the math of it.
Yep.
They're like, what math is this? Why are you doing this math? This math is weird.
And our Facebook user wonders if it's the same loot that we saw in TOS. I'm sure that's
so.
the implication.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have to see if it's, you know, like one gets damaged and he replaces it at some point, or he gives it as a ceremonial gift to a diplomat or something and then has to replace it. I don't know. We'll have to see, but I'm certain that that's what they're sort of leading you to believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the future, you can see scenes. He's going back to the doctor, going, "Look, I need another one." He goes back.
Can you write me a new prescription for a loot?
He comes out with a banjo the next time, and then an organ.
Oh man, this is such Lower Deck stuff. It would fit.
Oh God, this is so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It could absolutely fit. Charles, I think you said something very interesting, like we were saying about the whole thing, like it was kind of silly, but it didn't bother me. Spock being a little emotional, I lean a little bit toward not liking it, but at the same time, he, as Veronica said, he should be, because we don't just want to brush over the fact that he broke his logical control. And I found it was very interesting in there. At one point, they said that we all know Vulcans don't lie. Well, we all know that's not the truth. And so I kind of like that, because the Vulcans, they craft a very careful image of themselves. You know, the Vulcans encourage people to believe they could not lie. They lie all the dang time, and I think they encourage people to think that they really don't have emotions.
Of course they do.
Yeah, they're more jacked up than Klingons when it comes to controlling emotions. So I do like that.
Yeah,
excellent.
What do we think about the Klingons? I know, Alan, you had talked about from the trailer, you were a little worried that the Klingons were going to be too uniform looking.
Yeah, and they weren't.
No.
they didn't have a very, you know, quote unquote traditional look as far as like what we expect from Next Gen and the 24th century shows, but I liked them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think one of the problems that the modern shows have is that when they're doing aliens of a different complexion, they tend to use makeup that's really thick and kind of like has a shiny, like a sheen to it. Like the Andorians on Disco always look kind of plasticky because they didn't look like skin tones. They looked like someone had painted somebody else's face. Yeah. And I kind of got that sense from these Klingons as well. But at the same time, I thought some of the ridge patterns were cool, and some of the way that they wore their hair and the way that some of the hair like integrated into the ridge patterns, I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that first guy that was doing the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene with La'an. I thought he was really good as a Klingon, a very expressive guy working through the makeup. I thought he had a small role, but that guy struck me from that first scene he was in. Yeah,
agreed.
And I read that Saru's sister was that lady Klingon, the one that
no
was talking
way
to La'an. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I wouldn't have recognized her on my own.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
I'd have been like, "Hey, Jamie Lee Curtis." Nope, not her. I'm not always good at that kind of thing. Dan says familiarity with the Discovery/Crossfield class by an alien species seems kind of a callback to the Kylie species in the series premiere.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that reminds me, the character I was trying to think of earlier was Kyle.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, for the transporter chief?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked Kyle, but I think Chief J is going to be just as good.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sure that's going to be great. Okay, Jay says my headcanon for them is that the comparisons to the Klingons of Discovery compared to TOS to the TNG DS9 is all from where the Klingon Empire they came from, and even what part of Kronos they come from. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that.
Sure.
I totally see that as being a thing. You know, it's funny.
Sure.
I mean, it makes as much sense as any other theory.
It's always funny when you see a shuttlecraft land on a planet and they look around and they're like, "Oh, this is a forest planet." No, you're standing in a forest on a big planet that has lots of different terrains.
Yeah.
You don't have a forest planet or a desert planet.
Right.
And, it's just, so you're not going to see a Klingon and think every Klingon looks exactly like that, because Klingons from different regions. And we kind of saw that in first season of Picard with the Romulans. They had all these different looks of Romulans, and it depended on where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the exact right approach to these kind of things.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't mind that each show basically has their version. Like even between DS9 and TNG, there was differences in the way the Klingons looked, and the hair was different and the makeup changed over time. I mean, I don't have any problem with each of these different shows doing their own interpretation of the aliens. I don't mind if the Andorians on Discovery look different from the one from Picard. I don't get real worked up about that. I don't even really mind the Discovery Klingons, the season 1 ones that everybody seems to have hated.
I didn't either.
Sort of extreme looking, but
I thought they were cool.
Yeah. I do like in this one that they're swerving a little more into the TOS aesthetic with the gold armor and things like that. I think that works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was also not. Sorry, go ahead, Island.
No.
Apologize.
No.
It was also nice to see what we always call the Klingon battle cruiser show up.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this episode was good. Like I said, it wasn't a mind-blowing episode. I think that the first season premiere, I think, is a better episode, but I thought this one was good. I enjoyed it. I had my criticisms, but off we go.
Yeah.
Right on. I'm ready to see what's coming this season.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm hoping that the whole thing with Spock and his emotions isn't too much. Gorn, I'm just gonna have to get used to it. I literally groaned when they said the Gorn, because I was so intrigued. Oh my gosh, this is awesome! What's this new race that oh god, it's the Gorn. So I just have to deal with it.
You knew
we're not gonna have a war
coming back.
Yeah. I didn't know it was gonna come back. I didn't know they're gonna be this big of a deal, because I thought, oh my goodness. It's always intriguing, because you remember the Cardassians were introduced, a completely new race with whom the Federation had a war. I love it when they do stuff like that.
Sure.
I just didn't know if it was going to be the Gorn, but it could be intriguing.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of the Cardassians, though, it's worth pointing out too that the Cardassians looked very different from the Cardassians we later became familiar with.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Even though I'm always belly aching about the Gorn looking different, it's not the first time this has happened.
Right.
Yeah.
And Dan has already pointed out, Michael Westmore has said that the geographic source accounts for the differences between Odan, who appeared in Next Generation, and later Trills.
Okay.
So I mean, it totally makes sense. That has happened many times, and even from the original series to the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I personally feel like they never actually needed to give an explanation for why Klingons look different. One funny line in a DS9 episode is all you needed.
Right.
That's all. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. All right. Well, we're coming up on the end. Anybody have any closing thoughts about it before we close this thing out?
I do think, like Michael Phillips said, I think the word is solid. It wasn't fantastic, but it also wasn't bad. And many times the things can come back and you go, ooh, that wasn't that good. And they also didn't try to, do the second season thing or sequel thing. Sometimes when people try to go over the top, more this and that. It was a self-assured show, and I like that. Just a self-assured premiere.
Agreed. Okay, we're going to call this the question of the week.
Awesome.
This is one that Jay just posted. Jay says, if there is any surprise species from later Trek, is there any one species that you would want to see? And I'm going to say on this show or Lower Decks or whatever, but on this show specifically. That's a good question.
Just any species we've already seen, but you want to see them featured here? Is that the question?
Yeah. If they were going to do it, who would you want to do?
I'll say Kazenti.
Oh, yes. Good one.
Tholians is good too.
I love the Tholians. I love everything about the first introduction of the Tholians, even that crazy kind of cartoon looking background, the voices, the renowned Tholian punctuality. The Tholians, absolutely.
Jay is also saying like a first contact, so it doesn't have to be an enemy.
Okay. I'm
gonna say I really want to see the introduction of and the establishment of a relationship with the Beta Z planet.
Oh, Yeah, that'd be
I
good.
would love to
Cool.
see how the Betazoids come into the Federation and are first encountered, and what Starfleet's, first impression is of a truly telepathic species. And are they wary of them? Are they nervous to be around them? Do they trust them? They don't.
Well, that's a good question, because how would you? Because you have to really think about telepaths around your secure systems, your everything,
Right.
Everything. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Did you have one, Veronica?
I did not. I really like Alan's Betazoid.
Okay.
Oh yeah, thanks.
And I'll throw in too that I'd even love to see like early Cardassians before they went, because they were supposed to have been a very different species and more peaceful and artistic before they had like this natural resource situation and sort of the fascists took over. Yeah. And that would be an interesting story that would tie in well with some of our current politics, Yeah.
But now that you've said Kzinti, that's all I want.
Right.
Like that and this show could make it happen and make it look great.
Oh yeah.
Oh, now I'm crazy about that idea.
All right.
Okay. Can I do one more?
Yeah,
one last comment.
Sure.
Dan says, I wish it would have been someone other than Chapel and Bingo who were jeopardized in this episode, because due to TOS, we already know they both survive. Well, that's true, but that's true.
Yeah,
but you don't think they're going to kill somebody off in the first episode anyway.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, I'm not genuinely concerned that a Star Trek character is going to die.
Never.
That really only happens when it's a contractual dispute.
Right. And you've pretty much heard already that they're leaving the show.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem you have when you have characters that are all in TOS and so forth. That you already have an idea of what their fates are going to be. Like Ortegas, we don't know. Maybe she could die.
Exactly. Exactly.
They better.
I am curious to see how they're going to handle the trial with Una, because again, watching last series, I had forgotten that not only is she genetically engineered, and obviously she had to hide it, but she mentioned a point that she lied on her Starfleet entrance. That's kind of sort of supposed to be the kiss of death for a career. So I'm very interested in how they're going to get out of this.
Right. I mean, service record is going to play into it. She has an exemplary service record, so that's going to weigh in her favor, and she'll have people who will speak on her behalf. But I think that trial settings can be really engaging, and I can't wait. I mean, I hope they spend a whole episode on the trial. I'm just going to say it. I don't need an action episode. I just want.
Oh yeah.
I just think it would be fascinating to see the Starfleet judicial system at work.
Yeah, and I hope that they're challenging Starfleet on their own bigotry, because that's really the point of it. It's like one of the Federation's remaining bigotries is against genetically enhanced people.
Right.
Well, spoilers y'all for DS9 listening. But what's funny is we know all the way up to DS9 they still have this thing against genetically engineered people. So wouldn't it be funny that that's the whole thing? Like there's a whole docket of genetically engineered people waiting for trial, and every single one of them has to prove they're worth it over and over and over.
But I'm wanting. I mean, I really do want to see that, and I want whatever episode it happens in, presumably next week. That could be our next Measure of a Man or Drumhead. There's so much potential there. Yeah. So I can't wait to see what they do with it.
Yeah. And whoever this character is they went to find, I hope she's interesting. You always think of like the Samuel T. Cogley or that Klingon lawyer.
Yes.
I want someone like that.
I literally keep thinking about a female version of him, Charles. That's all I can do is like some lady going, "What's the matter? You don't like books?"
Right.
All right. So, Keith, where can people find more of you?
Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups, and of course on our own Earth Station track. Well, I recently was awarded top contributor.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I had to laugh when I got that.
And how about you, Alan?
Well, I have another podcast called Modern Musicology. We just released our first of a two-parter on the music of 1983, and it is a really good episode. Part 2 comes out this coming Monday, and it is equally good. And I also have a Doctor Who podcast. It's called Doctor Who A to Z.
Awesome.
And that stands for Doctor Who Auton to Zygon.
You could spend.
Why not?
I was thinking you could spend hours talking about music in '83 and music now.
Dude, that's why we had to make it a 2-part episode, because
Yes.
there is so much stuff that came out in 1983, and every album that came out, like for the first episode was like an hour and a half, because there is so much stuff just in the first 6 months.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, so much to talk about. So everybody should go listen to that episode.
Hell, you still had groups like Loverboy and ELO putting out stuff.
I don't think Loverboy was quite that early.
83?
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So, Veronica, where can people find more of you two?
Feltnerdy.com.
Yep. And if you're in the Atlanta area, come see us this Saturday, the 17th, at the Sandy Springs Library.
That's my library.
That's right, at 3:00. And then, or you could see us, I think it's July 22nd, which is a Saturday. We'll be at the Sinful Variety Show doing an adult themed routine. That's a show where there's burlesque and drag, and we're bringing puppets, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Don't get the two mixed up.
Yeah, don't get your wires crossed, folks.
That's right. And then we're in the midst of confirming a lot of things with Dragon Con, and we should have several shows going on at Dragon Con that we'll talk more about soon. But we're about to get right into Dragon Con season. We're gonna be in the dead heat, getting ready for Dragon Con.
Nice.
3 months.
And where else can people find us?
Where else?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And do you have a closing for us this week?
Look, nay.
Perfect.
Nice. Yes.
All right.
Oh, I thought we were going out. Bye, everybody.
Oh,
yeah. Thanks for all participating. Thanks, Dan and Jay and Facebook user.
Oh God.
And Jay, we need to start
do a thing.
And Jay, we got to start talking about ships.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Bye,
All right,
everybody.
everybody. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
See you soon.
Bye.